A reading of poems for Refugee Week 2021. Hello. I have worked as a volunteer with asylum seekers and refugees for almost 6 years now, ever since the city where I live became a city of sanctuary. The poems I'm going to read today are all about real people and their true stories. All I've done is change their names. In the poems, I try to describe meeting asylum seekers and refugees and sharing what I can of their experiences here, living in the United Kingdom. In some ways, their stories are remarkable and the things that have happened to them extraordinary, and in other ways, they are just like us. The poems are taken from my 2 Wayleaf pamphlets, from Testimony, published in 2019, and from Just Above the Waterline, published in January of this year. This is a reading to mark Refugee Week and to try to share with you the privilege of working with asylum seekers and refugees. When I started this work, people often said to me, "What's it like working with refugees? Tell us about it." And this poem is based on one such encounter where I went for lunch with a friend, and later on, since then, she's actually become a volunteer with our organisation. Lunchtime stories. We came here for lunch, sat in the bay window, the white tablecloth, the leftovers on our plates, watching the rain fall steadily on the garden, summer green. After the food, you asked me about working for refugees. You must have heard some stories, fragments, hints, glimpses. One who asked me how to post a letter. I took him to buy an envelope and stamps. He said he had hidden in a freezer lorry, running on the spot all night, just to stay alive. Another asked why the doctor had given him a paper and not pills. As I took him to the chemist, he told me he had walked across the Sahara. A woman asked me would I help her buy a railway ticket. She'd never travelled on a train. She said, "The men were distracted by another woman, so I ran. I had to." We sat with the half-told stories, the white tablecloth, the leftovers on our plates, watching the rain fall steadily on the garden, summer green. That's the only poem I'm going to read from the first pamphlet, Testimony. And now I'm going to read you a series of poems from my more recent pamphlet, Just Above the Waterline. And I'm going to start with the first poem, the title poem in the book, which captures that idea that maybe some of us who work with refugees feel when we go on holiday to Mediterranean countries. Just above the waterline. Each morning look at the blue-green water, sparkling, sunlit, Mediterranean, from balcony, bench or beach, boats on the misty horizon. Then look out to sea towards Africa. Each evening watch while the hot day disappears behind mountains, the sky chasing itself through colours, the headland peppered with lights, the tiniest movements of waves on the beach. In the dark, out at sea, humanity, just above the waterline, in tiny boats. Some will land, some drown. The next poem describes a conversation between a midwife, a social worker, and a young woman who had just got leave to remain and was also expecting a baby. And it tries to capture the way she spoke about her journey here, getting here. The social worker asks, "How did you get here?" "From Italy," she says. She looks around the room, stands to remove her shawl from where it covers her hair. "I am flying," she says, lifting her arms like wings. Before that, "From Eritrea." "Yes." "I walk," she says, 3 days. "Alone?" With people, we walk. To where? Egypt, the sea. And then? In boat. Silence. Not good. Too many peoples. To Italy. And then? They bringing me here. Now I'm here 2 years. And now you're safe, says the social worker. She stands to replace her shawl, lifting her arms like wings. This poem has its own little introduction in the book, and I'll just read it to you. In January 2020, The Guardian reported over 600,000 undocumented migrants in this country. The authorities do not have the resources to find and deport. So many people who come here seek asylum are refused. And this poem is called Undocumented. That's how they came here. No passports, no papers, t-shirts, shorts, flip-flops, everything they had in a plastic bag. November, in the north of England. 4 young men. I never heard their stories. Hamid spoke a little English, wanted to learn more. Later he fell off his bicycle, broke his arm. The NHS documented that. Ramon sat in the corner and played with his phone. He didn't speak, was afraid. Amin lied about his age. He said he was younger than he was. Lots of us do that. He got fined for dropping a cigarette end in the street in Doncaster where he went visiting. The council documented that. DR only stayed 1 day, cadged 20 quid off someone and went to Liverpool. The others stayed 2 years and were refused the new life, the freedom they came looking for. So they took it anyway and disappeared. They're out there somewhere, falling off bicycles, dropping cigarette ends. I document them here. One of the things that the asylum seekers have to do is report to the Home Office every now and they find this a very stressful and frightening experience. And so this is a poem about one such occasion. Reporting to the Home Office. The letter said you're illegal, liable to be detained, deported. Fearful, obeying it. You come here every month to meet the conditions of your immigration bail. All you've done is fled danger, torture, war. Here you're a criminal. Now the shape behind the bulletproof glass calls you forward, a uniform, watchful, indifferent as the moon. The volunteer who's come with you steps back to wait for you. You go forward and stand alone. You feel the sweat gather on your neck. Your hand crawls across the page of writing. You sign your name. The uniform looks up from the papers. 1 moment. The volunteer smiles at the uniform. To you, she says, we'll go outside and call your lawyer. They leave. The room breathes out. The next 3 poems, which I'll finish this reading, are all about people who have got refugee status, leave to remain, are able to stay here. And again, they try to capture something of what that means for them. First one is called Along the Canal. All the usual people, 2 students sharing chips, giggling over their phones, a drunk on a bench half under the bridge for a shelter, curled up asleep, his empty cans in a line at his feet. She's here too today, her hijab, padded jacket, on a warm May morning, her crutch and shopping trolley propped beside her, feeding the ducks. She turns to greet me, touching my arm, like little children, she says. I know nothing of her language, and she knows little of mine. I know little of her life, she knows nothing of mine. I wonder if what she misses most are the ordinary things, her pots and pans, her daily walk to market, left behind in a place she can't go back to. She's brought with her the things she doesn't want, her ruined city, her lost family, her damaged body. There's something brittle about her, something beautiful in the way she reaches out her hand with broken bread. Leave to remain. When people get leave to remain, they have to wait for their benefits, and so here they usually go and stay with a local family for a while. Leave to remain. Strangers invite you into their home, new words for garden, bread. The same word with two meanings, bank, one for money, one for food. You know banks as tall buildings in the cities, distant lives lived behind dark glass, guarded by men with guns. Not here. Sometimes something you understand, words spoken in a language, not the language of your village, but the one you used in the markets, heard spoken in the towns. In the evening you go back to your friends for familiar food and company. They are still waiting. Over the weeks the difference grows between you. Here in the stranger's house, in your bed at night, may you sleep without dreams. When you wake, may you remember you have a new word for morning. I'm going to finish with a poem which is based on a quotation from Ezekiel, chapter 37, verse 11, and it's called The Valley. Our bones are dried up, our hope is lost, we are cut off completely. Across the table I ask, now you're allowed to stay, what do you want to do? Bring my family. He shows me a photograph, a young woman holding a baby. One day I would like to go home. Midnight, lit up by exploding shells, the endless grey of ruined buildings, no recognisable handmarks, the rattle of dry bones in a windless valley. Are you in touch with them? I point to the photograph. No, this picture I took before I came. My son is now 2 years old. He stands to leave and he smiles. He will find his son, rebuild his city. He fills the dry bones with his courage, his hope. Thank you.